funding, right? So this funding goes through school year 2026, which means you can build upon the work that you've already been doing through our PESTER funding and some of your other funding. So exciting time, and thanks, John, and let's get rolling.
Okay, thank you, John. I'm going to go to the next slide here. So what was the impetus for this grant program? Last year, in the wake of the Uvalde shooting in Texas, our Congress and President Biden passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which, amongst other things, dedicated millions of dollars to each of the states to promote school safety, inclusion, and belonging. Through this act, there was a grant program set up called the Stronger Connections Grant Program, and Connecticut was awarded almost $9 million to distribute to quote unquote high need LEAs on a competitive basis. States like Connecticut were allowed to come up with their own definition of what a high need LEA was. It doesn't follow the traditional Alliance District model that we have here. And so our definition is pretty straightforward. If you are an LEA that has what we consider to be a high rate of poverty, so at least 30% of your students are on free or reduced meals, and your district has either a high rate of chronic absenteeism, which we say here is at least 25%, or disproportionate rates of suspension or expulsion, your district is eligible for funding through this grant program. The U.S. Department of Education has established three kind of overarching goals for this program. One, that we fund strategies that are considered evidence-based, and we'll talk more about that in a second later in this presentation. Two, that LEAs really engage families and communities and students in the selection of the programs and strategies and ideas that you would like to see funded through this grant program. And then three, that these programs are designed and conceived of with equity at the forefront. As John mentioned, the funding is going to last through 2026. So there is a 3-year grant. This is a 3-year grant that we're providing. And we are going to be accepting applications over the next 2 months through November 3rd. So just under 2 months of time to be able to put this together. Okay, so you should see your district somewhere on this slide. There are 66 districts that were eligible for funding. And next to your district, you will see what your grant allocation is. Note that this is an allocation that will last over the 3 years. So if you wanted to estimate what it would look like on a year-to-year-to-year basis, you could just take this number and divide it by 3.
Looks like John may have frozen a bit. John, if you can hear us, you're frozen. So, and just so you're aware, the announcements, the identification of the allotments for each district was based. Obviously, you were selected based on the criteria that John determined, but the other is based on your student enrollment. That's how the numbers. That's how the numbers panned out. Okay, looks like John may be logging off and logging back in. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, awesome. Thanks. All right, let's give John a second to chime back in. John may get to this as well, but if you decide that you don't want to apply for the funding, if you decide like, you know, some of the funding is not a great amount, if you decide not to, please let us know that as well. And then so that we can reallocate it to some other districts who may be able to use it. All right, John, you're back.
Sorry, everyone. For some reason, Teams sent me a message that there was a glitch and they decided to kick me off. So I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen again and pray that that does not happen again. Just give me 1 second to get this set back up for y'all. Okay, can you see the slides again? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Laura. So again, these are the allocations that your district has. We encourage you to be thoughtful about how you want to maximize these funds across all 3 years. I think this is where I cut out, not just uploading that or front loading those funds in the first year and not waiting until the 25-26 school year to exhaust all of them. We also want you to think about what you're currently doing around school safety, belonging, what maybe you're funding with ESSER or Title I or other sources of federal and state funding, and how can you take these dollars that will start this school year and extend the work that you're already doing. So there's different things that you can do with these funds, but encourage you to be able to spread them out across all 3 years. Speaking of activities, here is a list, and I'm not going to read through all of these. These are in the application overview document, but I do want to give 30 seconds to pause here and give you all a chance to look through these as well. To be clear, these come from section 4108 of Title IV. And I know there's section 4107, which and section 4109, which focus on other things, but only activities funded under section 4108 can be funded with this grant activity. So let me give you 30 seconds to read through this list. Okay. If there's questions, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but if there's questions, I'm going to leave plenty of time at the end and we can go through any of these or things that are not on this list that you might also be curious about. Something that I did want to emphasize here at the very bottom is what we can't spend these fundings on. So anything used to arm teachers or train teachers in how to use weapons, anything related to providing medication directly to students, anything related to major construction projects, those are prohibited under these funds, under this grant program using these funds. Smaller, minor things, renovations, repairs, the installation of metal detectors or surveillance cameras, those are allowed. The other thing that is allowed that we got questions about is school resource officers and other types of school-based officers. Those can be funded with this grant program. But new construction projects or anything related to firearms is we're probably not going to fund if we see it in your application. Okay, there are 6 primary components. We tried to make this application fairly streamlined. I will say, even though you have a guaranteed award amount that I shared on the previous slide, this is still considered a competitive application, and we still want you to put together the best ideas that you can. So there's no guarantee that you will get this funding if you complete these 6 application fundings. We want you to put some thought and make sure that these applications are high quality. So the first section, the project description, it's worth 15 total points. This is where you'll present the case for why these funds are necessary, why you're interested in applying for them. We want to know what schools in your district you're going to focus on, the population of students that you want to target, how you plan to use these funds to increase student equity. Second is evidence-based programming. As I mentioned, one of the goals of this program is to focus on strategies that are considered evidence-based. And here you'll explain what your LEA plans to do with the funding, and you can cite any relevant research to support its effectiveness. In the application document, you'll see in the appendix that we listed the 4 tiers of evidence that are outlined in the Every Student Succeeds Act. If you haven't seen this before, take some time to go through it. It basically ranks what is good evidence from tier 1, which is the strongest type, all the way down to tier 4. We would love for you to invest in strategies that are as evidence-based as possible, that meet that tier 1 and that tier 2 ranking. However, we know that that's not always possible, and there might be things that haven't been rigorously researched, that haven't been written up in an academic journal before, or that just don't have any evidence out there, period. And so if that's the case, you can choose things that are tier 3 and tier 4, but in alignment with the mission of this grant program, we want to be using these funds in ways that we know are going to work, right? And in strategies that have already been proven to be effective, rather than necessarily new ideas that we want to try out. And so we encourage you to hew to those first 2 tiers as much as possible. Third is stakeholder engagement. This is the third goal I was talking about, where you will want to include some type of community input and buy-in into what your LEA is proposing. We want to see how you incorporated voices from all corners of your community, whether that be through focus groups, whether that be through surveys, whether that be some, through Board of Education meetings. However your LEA thinks is best appropriate to engage the community in the selection of the ideas for this proposal, that's going to be important to this application. Fourth is timeline and objectives. So here you'll just let us know your timeline for implementation, your short-term and medium-term objectives. Again, try to take this funding as much as possible and spread it across the 3 years rather than just in 1 year. Fifth is sustainability, where we want to know how your LEA is going to braid this funding with other state and federal funding that you might have in order to maximize the use of their funds. And then finally, the budget. And I want to show you, this is also in that application overview document, but this is what I would say an exemplar budget looks like, and I think reflects the right amount of detail and clarity for what we want the budgets coming from you to look like as well. Just a couple of tips here. One, provide sufficient detail, right? Let us know exactly what it is that you're funding. If you're putting something in there that's potentially new or that hasn't been tested in Connecticut, just give a brief description. That's all we ask for. Avoid language like TBD or miscellaneous, and try to be as specific as much as possible. 2, you can include in the budget in the application your budget for all 3 years. So for example, you see here how this budget includes 1 part-time mental health counselor times 3 years. So this LEA is including this person in year 1, year 2, and in year 3. 3, check your math, especially these subtotals. We often find that these numbers here don't always add up to the bottom line. And so when we award funds, sometimes districts actually get less money than what they budgeted for. So just double check that. And then 4th, only include eligible expenses. Again, referring to that list that we provided earlier. This application is going to be open for the next 2 months. We encourage every LEA to apply for it that is eligible. That brings us to the end of the presentation. Like I said, I wanted to make sure we left time at the end for questions. So if there are any, John and I are happy to take them. Otherwise, we wish you the best on your applications. I see, is there a hand up? Yes, from Wendy. Go ahead, Wendy.
Hi, how are you? Obviously, we would love to be able to use this in our district. Just trying to clarify on the budget, if it will be a cross-funded initiative that the district is looking at, should we be specifying what other funding sources will be supplementing this grant in the application?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, if you were funding a certain program with additional sources of funding, should you list those other sources of funding in your application?
Correct.
Yes, that would be great. Please do include whether it be ESSER, Title I, or Title IV allocation as it is. Something I didn't mention is that this is a supplement to the Title IV funding that you're already getting. It shouldn't be, it's not replacing or supplanting your existing Title IV allocation. It's additive. So if you want to do more with your current Title IV funding, that's perfectly allowed, and we would love to know that too.
But those budget numbers, so if you're braiding it with Title IV, your Title IV funding or with your ESSER funding, that shouldn't be in the budget portion of it, right? It'll be in the narrative portion, but the budget will just tell us how you're using these specific funding.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that clarification, John. Kevin.
Hi. I just wanted to clarify, one of your slides at the bottom said that this could not be used for medical services. And I think verbally you said medicinal or medicine, but it said medical services. And yet in the sample budget, it said that it was going to pay for a part-time mental health professional. So I'm trying to just figure out how you define medical in this case.
So I think in this case, specifically what we mean is providing any type of medicinal services and drug treatments targeted to students. So providing mental health counseling, for example, would certainly be an allowable use, but using this funding to pay for a mental health prescription or drug treatment would not.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Someone from Meriden?
Yes, hi, this is Patty Sullivan. I'm in a room with a few people, so we just clumped it as Meriden. So I just want to make sure I understand. So if we do have some programs that we're currently funding through ESSER, but that's going to be running out, is it something that we can say, like, we would like to extend it, and so not actually use the funds year one, but apply the funds to year two and year three? Is that acceptable, since ESSER would be covering that year one?
That I think is fine. Yes, if you were intending to use the funds only in year three, I think that would probably create an issue.
Yeah.
But if you want to wait until years 2 and 3 to use the funds and allow your ARP-ESSER funding to run out so that you have continuity, as long as what you're funding kind of matches the goals of this program, I think that that's fine.
Yeah, this is what we're just starting to dialogue on, is on our family engagement and our family outreach. That's been really successful. And while we had some of that prior to ESSER funding, we really have needed a larger number to be effective. And of course, we're grappling with the fact that that funding is over at the end of the year, but the problems haven't gone away. So
Absolutely. Yep.
okay. All right. That's
perfect
helpful.
Example. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much.
There was a question I saw in the chat from Charlene. Do you know when you will communicate award notifications? Probably sometime in December, Charlene, is when you can expect to hear from us. A question from Maria. I'd like to clarify if the 3,000 character limit applies to each section individually. Yes. Each section has its own question, and each of those questions is going to meet that limit. Question from Jill. Yes, the slides will be shared. So on our website, we have a Stronger Connections page, and we will include the slides from this meeting, and we will include the recording as well. That's also where you can find the application overview document that I encourage you to read in addition to watching this webinar, and you'll find the link to the application there too. Kevin, I see your hand up. Is that a new question or from before?
No, I just forgot to put it down.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's see. A question from Christopher. Can the funds be used to support a new school-based health clinic? This would include some minor construction. I think at face value, Christopher, this would probably be okay. There's a lot, it's a loaded question, so I think we'd have to talk through the details of what that looks like, and happy to do that offline. But I think at first blush that would probably be fine. Can you please share? Yes, let me get that for you right now. Okay, I just dropped the link to the website. So this is where the recording and the slides will be posted by tomorrow, I would say.
John, just for my own clarification, I'm pretty sure that the funds are eligible now, right? So they're going to submit their application sometime between now and first week in November, right? But if they've got activities that are allowable under the grant program, the funds can cover that starting essentially with the start of this school year, right? So in other words, if you're planning to do something and you're going to use these funds to cover it, as long as it's an allowable expense and we approve it, you can use those funds to cover now.
Yep. Anything at the beginning of the 2023 school year, which we are now in, can be covered. Which raises another point, John. Like all of our grants out of the department, this will be given on a reimbursement basis only. So when you go in to access your funds, you will want to provide some type of expense documentation, receipts, invoice, etc., to show that the expense has been incurred. We do not provide funding prospectively anymore on any type of grant. Question from Amy. Hello, since this is a competitive grant process, what will happen to any excess funds if LEAs aren't awarded or if they decide not to apply? We're going to probably make that call, Amy, after we see how many applications are received and how many are awarded funding. All right, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, my email is in that application overview document. Feel free to email me if anything does come up between now and November 3rd. I will be your main primary point of contact if you want to go into anything deeper. Other than that, we wish you all the best with this application and look forward to hearing from you all. So thank you. Have a good rest of your week.